We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello, welcome to IB Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I have Crohn's disease.
And I'm Michelle Harvey. I'm Mason's mom, and I speak from the role of a caregiver. And today's
We're
topic
talking about something that I don't know much about, but is very important for kids like me or their conditions.
So Mason's going to learn this week. Usually we try to work.
We're both going to learn.
Yeah, you're going to learn with them.
Yes.
So we usually try to work on these together. Mason had a very busy week with school, and so I prepared a lot of this episode myself. So he's going to be learning along with you guys. And I think that's kind of, you can ask any questions along the way too, if you have any questions.
I'll ask questions for you guys. I'll try if I have any questions.
Yeah. Because since Mason's homeschooled, we have never had to utilize any kind of plans or help with the public school system as far as his educational needs because of Crohn's disease. But a lot of you out there do have your kids in public school, and it's really important that you know your options for your kids. And
if you were like me, where you were older and you're already doing school, it's hard to be like, oh, well, we'll just do homeschool now. You're already set up for everything. So
it's hard. Some caregivers can't homeschool. It's just not possible with their jobs.
She could do it because she's amazing. She's Michelle. She's a superhero.
Yeah. I wish.
She's a caregiver.
I wish.
She's a best caregiver.
Thank you.
And not everyone can do it. It's a pretty challenging thing.
So for those of you and those of you out there listening who are kids who are in school, there are accommodations that can be made. So the thing that most of y'all know is that when you have IBD, when you have Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, it can be unpredictable, right? It's not like you're going to know, oh, so there's going to be a flare on March, whatever. And
what's going to happen today?
Yeah.
Flare today.
It's like you don't know. So the thing is, you have a lot of appointments, right?
Yes.
You would be missing school for those appointments.
Yes. And that's actually why homeschool was really good for me, because we were able to be like, if I had an appointment on Wednesday, we'd be able to scoot that day over to a weekend. But if you went to public school, you would have to.
You'd miss the day.
You would, when you go to do all the stuff on the weekend or move the whole day forward, you don't know what you did that day.
Yeah, so because you miss the instruction from
like, what are we? Okay, I see this problem right here, but what do I have to do to solve this? What is this?
Yeah. So it can be difficult. And for us, homeschool was great. But for other kids, you might be missing school from those appointments, or you might have things like the flares, like we were just talking about, or even if you get certain treatments, you may have certain side effects, things that will not enable you to go to school. The problem, though, for kids is that they are still responsible for learning and completing their schoolwork, just like all the other kids.
Crohn's, so I don't need to learn about this. Right. That's not how it works.
No. And you still want that education. Yes, so it's not like you just want like a pass either. Like, well, just let me pass. It's like you need that education as you go. So a lot of times what happens is students with chronic illness can face lower academic achievements. And that isn't fair. It's not, they shouldn't be penalized because of their
disease,
what they face. Yeah. So the thing that helps is something called a 504 plan. You may have also heard of an IEP. I'll go into that a little bit later because it's a little different. A 504 plan is something that you'll be more likely to use if you have IBD, but you may already have an IEP in place for something else, or you may need a combo of both. But we're going to cover all that. We got you guys. So what do you think? So if a 504 plan is necessary for someone with IBD, do you think every kid in public school with IBD needs one? What do you think?
I think so. It could be important for anyone to have that has a disorder that might be like Crohn's disease, but I think it is definitely important for anyone with Crohn's disease to have it.
Right. And even if you're in remission, and so maybe some parents out there are thinking, well, I don't need this because my child
is fine.
Right. They're doing great. But
he's not on flare right now. He's in remission.
So you might not be thinking that you need a 504 plan, but think of it like an insurance policy, something that you have in place.
I guess look at this as be like, do you need insurance for your car? And you're like, my car isn't crashed right now, so I don't need it.
Yeah.
And then you crash your car. You didn't know that was going to happen.
You're like, now I have to go
Like,
get
now I need
insurance.
insurance.
So one of the important things is to have something in place. Just because you have it doesn't mean your child has to use it, but it's good to have it in place. We're going to discuss more. I guess let's discuss more of what is a 504 plan. And just so we know, today I gathered all of this information from the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. They have
to them again.
Yeah, no, they're excellent.
Yeah.
They have their website is so easy to use, and they have all of these resources linked together as you're reading articles all about 504 plans and so many helpful things to help you. So this is where we're getting our information from because I like to educate myself and know what is out there in case things change. So,
also, if you want to know more about Crohn's disease and colitis and things like this, and maybe we did not talk about in our podcast, you can always go to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation website.
Yep, which we'll link.
Yeah, we'll link that, and you can find whatever you want to learn about.
It's a great website.
Yes.
It's got a lot of useful information, and this especially. And you're going to find a little bit more as we go through this. It is a plan that was based on Section 504 of the Federal Rehabilitation Act. So Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is a national law, so not just state level. This is a national law.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, it is. And it protects qualified individuals from discrimination based on their disability. It basically addresses the issues that you would face in the education system when you have a child with physical disabilities, and it requires their physical needs have to be addressed while they're at school. So,
Good.
and having Crohn's disease, just so everyone listening knows, having Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis is considered a disability under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So they would qualify. It's also a legally binding document. So that is something, it's very important. This is not something to take lightly or for people in the education system to either take lightly. But it's a legally binding document, and it allows your student to have specialized accommodations due to, in this case, it can be other things, not just IBD, but today, just to be clear, we're only specifically talking how it applies to IBD, but it is definitely used for other things as well. Definitely. So what it does is it will allow you to have specialized accommodations for a child due to their IBD. We're going to go into this more because this is such a big topic. We're actually have 2 episodes.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So this next, what we're going to include in the next episode.
So stay tuned.
Yeah. Like what that includes, like what you would include in it. So it can include something like everything from unrestricted bathroom access.
That's good.
Yes. Like you shouldn't have limits. Like if the teacher's like, you already went once,
you know, you're in a flare. And you go, I don't know, like I went like 15 times a day sometimes. And they're like, well, you can only go once per school day. And
that would be
a
flare. Problem.
That's not right.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful.
Another thing might be like being allowed to take home exams if you're hospitalized or in a flare. So those are all things like we'll talk about in another episode with you guys. So you'll know more of what to request and what to put in there. But it ensures that children have equal access to education and support regardless of their medical condition, like IBD, which is cool, right? It's neat that they have something like this because not every child is able to be homeschooled.
Care for the people who, for the kids who can't be homeschooled.
And it's still, because it's still tough on them. It's still really hard on these kids, but at least this is something that is helpful, but still tough. They still have to be tough.
I wonder if it has anything, just out of curiosity, like does it have anything to do with PE? Like if they have
Yes. So yes, it does have something to do with PE as well. And we'll discuss on the next episode.
Okay, cool.
Because a 504 plan would cover something like with a PE class.
That's what I was wondering, because sometimes when I'm walking around, I have a sore ankle or joint pain like that. I'm like, I don't really feel like running today or
it's
push-ups or something like that, you know.
Right. So yeah, that's a great question. There's also a required collaboration here between not only like the caregivers, the parents like us, but your healthcare professionals and your school administrators. And you know, you might think that teachers know about this and they're aware, but they might know about 504 plans, but they may not know about IBD.
Yeah.
So it's important not to assume that a teacher, you know, or a substitute, because substitute may come in for a day. Yeah. And they're not going to understand. So having that 504 plan in place does help.
Remember, Crohn's disease is so new in like the disease world, kind of,
especially with kids,
Yeah,
I
especially with
think.
kids. And when I got, I was like, "What is that?" So teacher may not know what it is either.
Right. And we know a teacher that is retired and really didn't understand IBD. I was trying to explain it, and she told me that she had students that it was no big deal. That was what I'm going, how can you say IBD is no big deal being a teacher? Because it is a big deal. She may have not had either her students didn't know about their rights, didn't have a 504 plan, so she wasn't aware that IBD was under that, but
Or they may have not had Crohn's disease. They might have had
right.
severe.
Maybe there was a misunderstanding. So I took that opportunity to educate her about what IBD is as much as I could. And still, it's just important for people to understand and not just think that, oh, it's easy. And that's a lot of kids, it's an invisible disease. And so that's why they're protected under this act and why they're protected with the 504 plan, because you might look at them and a teacher could say, well, you look great.
You look healthy.
Right.
There's nothing really wrong
Yeah,
with you.
like it's not a big deal, but it is a really big deal. So it's important for educators to educate themselves on this as well. And one of the cool things that the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation actually has brochures. They've created these pamphlets that are a teacher's guide to this. So if you run into an issue like we did where a teacher doesn't understand it, and
you print out the brochure.
Yeah, it's online. It's on their website. We'll provide a link to that because that may be great for you to provide to a teacher.
Maybe you can bring it to school and say, well, here's the paper that's behind it. So you have proof or whatever.
Right. Because it is hard for parents, like, or even you, like, as the child, like to explain to the teacher so much about this. And maybe we don't even know all about it when we're trying to explain it. So that's a really cool resource. And I want to mention that. That's why I brought that up, because I wanted to mention that so you can use that for teachers.
And that link will be in the description.
Yeah, I'll have that. Yeah, you'll see that. One of the things you might be thinking right now, you may have heard about a 504 plan and an IEP. And
I've heard of the IEPs before.
Yeah. So it's like, what is that? We have some family who use IEPs. So we have heard of this. But an IEP is an individualized education plan. So that is for a child who has an intellectual or learning disability and requires specialized instruction or related services. It's a different process than a 504 plan. It's based on the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So it's a little, so it's a little different.
A little different, but it still has like the same.
Right. Still protecting kids that need that extra something to, to provide an equal opportunity for education. That's what that is, where a 504 plan covers necessary accommodations for medical and or behavioral needs that might not directly impact learning, but impact how you learn. So if your student has an IEP for special education and also has IBD, 504 accommodations can be incorporated into the IEP. So you can have both.
Okay. That's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. And again, this was taken from online. And if I hope I'm getting it all right and relaying all the information we learned.
It should be right though, because it's from
it's from the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Right.
Yeah. But if there's anything you want to add or share, please feel free to do that in the comments.
Just let us know.
And it's important to talk to your own medical team and your school to determine, if one or both is necessary for your child. We're going to walk you through the steps to take to get a 504 plan. And we'll be talking about the things to request, like we said, in another episode. Like that's going to, I really want to talk about that separately, because
we have another episode that's going to be like,
more 504 plan stuff. Yeah. So part 2
requesting for that episode, because you kind of roughly know what it's going to be about.
And so the steps to take. So the first thing you'd want to do is contact the school about developing a 504 plan for your child. And so that request can be verbal, it can be in writing, and it can come from, you or the school. So however that happens. And the next thing you're do is you're going to ask your child's doctor. You'd ask them for a letter or a medical report that can also confirm the diagnosis, right? Because you can't have somebody saying, which makes sense.
Yeah. Like just a random person saying, oh yeah, well, I'm sick. You need a doctor to be able to back that up. Right. The doctor is the one that knows.
Right. Because you're creating a legal document and you want to make sure that you have all these resources. So you will need that. So you're going to work with the medical team to get whatever necessary documentation is needed.
Versus the doctors.
Yeah. If you're like us, we have a great medical team who I'm sure they are familiar with these too. So you may be surprised your medical team may be familiar with this. They may have brought it up with you, so you may already know all about this. But if not, you're going to want to outline specific accommodations that are needed for your child, which is those accommodations that we're going to be discussing in that part two.
Part 2.
So you'll want to come back. Yeah, because that deserves a whole episode to itself. And so you're going to put all these in writing to create a 504 plan. One of the things they recommend is to set up a meeting with a guidance counselor or whoever the referred person is at your child's school to discuss the development of the 504 plan. And so I'm sure your school can point you in the right direction and let you know who you would speak with. And if you needed to, this is another cool thing the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has. They have a template that they've already created for you. It's on their website. It is to help you complete a 504 plan. So some schools will have their own version of a 504 plan, and you can,
for every school.
yeah. So, I mean, and you're welcome to use that, but you make sure you review them to ensure that it includes the accommodations for your child. So you have, you can talk to the school. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has a template available, which is really helpful because it is quite involved if you take a look at it. So it's a great start.
So here's a little question, I guess. But you were saying like for different accommodations to fill out different accommodations for each 504 plan.
Mhm.
So like I know you said it works for other things other than Crohn's. But like what would be some examples of that? Like IBD, IBS maybe?
Maybe something like diabetes because you may have to leave class to go get an
What
injection.
about like what is it called? Lactose intolerance or gluten intolerance? Would that be technically qualified because you have?
That's a good question. Because that also can cause issues where you have to use the bathroom.
Yeah, because it's not technically a disease,
right?
It's still an issue that you can't really control.
Right.
So that was just something interesting that I was kind of thinking.
So someone listening may know the answer to this. I don't know the exact answer, but I would start. I mean, it's a great question because if you're listening, you're like, well, we have this, and talk to your doctor. But there are certain qualifications you have to meet to do that. So I'm not sure, but that's why if you have these questions, start with your pediatrician and ask. And maybe if you don't qualify under 4504 plan for it, maybe still you can get a doctor's note and still talk to your teacher and ask for them to accommodate that.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, kind of. I tried.
Well, you did a good job of answering. Better than I could.
But it is a good question because it's not necessarily considered a disability to be lactose intolerant.
Like if it's not a disease.
Right. But that doesn't mean those kids should have to suffer either.
Just
right.
Because it's not a disease doesn't mean they should have to go through that because it's still kind of messing up with their day or whatever.
Right. So those are things that are important to discuss with the teachers, important to discuss, so that you can still help your child, even if it's not something like IBD.
Consult with your medical team first.
We always recommend that.
We're not doctors.
We're not. So it's always good to take up anything you're hearing today, bring up with your medical team. A good idea is to set up the 504 plan prior to the school year.
That's a question, I guess. You're saying you should do it before the school year starts. But what if like I was diagnosed during the summer, so the school year was about to start. But what if someone's kid was diagnosed during the school year and they had to get a 504 during the school year?
Yes.
Could that be possible?
I immediately thought of that when I was writing this up and reading it too, because I was like, well, not everybody is diagnosed at the same time.
It's not that perfect.
So so you would set it up as soon as you are diagnosed. So that's what I would do. The minute you have a diagnosis, whether it's in December or March, April, any of those, just get it set up.
Okay.
So so it's important to do it whenever the diagnosis takes place, but you always it only lasts for a year, which I'll mention later. So
which is why you should set up every year.
So what'll happen is so say you are diagnosed halfway through a school year, the next year you'd want to restart before the school year. So you'll want to have that plan set up. And then once you submit it, the school has 30 days to respond after receiving the letter. And
it's about a month.
Yeah. What you'll want to do is reach out to the school's designated 504 coordinator, and sometimes the school guidance counselors schedule meetings. And also something to discuss is important details of this need to be shared. Obviously, as a child, you may not want to share all this with other students, depending on how comfortable you are. You're like, I don't want to go around and tell everyone I have a 504 plan and I need this because, so maybe you just want to be like, you don't want anyone to know what you're going through. But the important people to know are, the teachers, school nurse,
principal.
Yeah. And if you're in any sports, coaches, school counselors. So there needs to be an awareness. You need to make sure out there that everybody is aware of this 504 plan. Never assume everybody has seen it, everybody knows. Make sure you advocate for your child and make sure that everyone is aware of this and understands the plan. So that's something that is important. Yeah.
To make sure of.
Yes. Yeah. Communication is everything. And so that way there's no misunderstandings and you're not thinking somebody knows something, then you get upset when they don't know. So just
better just to make sure in the first place and not start any of that.
Exactly. So that's very important to do. And like I mentioned earlier, the plan is valid for
single year.
So you're going to want to make sure you address this again the following year.
Set up every year before school.
Yeah.
Before.
Right. And make sure, and this, even though we got this from the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, that's actually an important question to probably still ask because maybe your school has a different policy. And maybe I'm not sure if they
maybe
can.
It's different for different schools.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they can because it's a national thing, but maybe it is different. So it's just good to check. Ask your school when you should reapply or if you need to. And so here's some ideas for the conversation with your school that you should have with them. Something might be like how critically necessary it is for anyone like Mason or anyone with this to be able to use the bathroom at any time and without delay, right? Not telling you, well, you need to wait 5 minutes till I'm done.
You're in a flare, you can't wait.
Right. Like if the teacher is instructing and they say, well, I need you to hold on till I'm done. It's like, no, go ahead. The teacher, and because you don't want to have anything that's humiliating for the student and make it worse. And it happens, guys.
Yeah.
That's the sad part is I hear this in stories where teachers don't let the child go and it is really awful. So, that's important for the teacher to really understand these things, that something like that. And
here's actually a question really quick.
Yeah.
You said that without delay, a kid can go to the bathroom during if a teacher is talking about what they're learning in the lesson. So how would that work? Because would the teacher stop for the entire class, or would when he comes back,
right? Because that would be
get a debrief. It's like the kid's in there for I don't know about 15 minutes. They can't wait for that long because the period can only be so long. They can't wait forever. How does that work?
So I am guessing.
You may not know.
As a teacher, I mean, if I was with a classroom, I would probably just like have some kind of a code with you. So that way, if you kind of raise your hand and, and it's like, go ahead. And I would just continue on like normal.
And then when they get back, you would brief them.
I mean, you would, this is where the 504 plan would come in because then you would have proper steps to take to make sure that, you help them out. Maybe you have someone who could take notes or have someone share something with the student, that they missed. Okay. So maybe they have notes or they have an outline of what they're talking about and they can provide you with something like that. That's just an idea off the top of my head. But you would have something worked out with the teacher. And this is why it's very important. Like when we talk about this next week, this is why it's so important to actually get detailed because questions like that, if it's important to you as a student that if I'm in the bathroom for half an hour when I come back, what if I missed the entire math lesson and now I don't know how to do my homework, so that is something that these are the kind of things you'd want to include to make sure that is addressed. If you do miss something, how is that made up? How are you, so yeah, that's a good question. And that's why this can be really something you need to think about and talk to your child too. Cause like look at with Mason, he's got all these questions, which is very important to consider them when you're doing this 504 plan. We mentioned everybody else, but not the child, but it is extremely important to include your child too, because they'll know their needs and know
what they want.
Right. So very important to include them. So you're going to have these conversations with the school so that they know, how symptoms affect you, how flares affect you, because again, you can't expect a teacher to just understand, what is going through your head or what you're feeling. It's like, they're not going to know. So it's important to keep that communication open and share for them how it can be, physically, how it can be mentally, and even emotionally, how this disease can affect you. And so it's important for your teacher to really understand this. Yeah. And so like we mentioned, this plan, it's important to review it. And when you update it annually, consider any changes too, because maybe something changed during that year. Maybe you found maybe something didn't work and you needed, so things can be changed for the following year too. So it's important to do that. What is also really a cool feature, which is great to bring up here, is that the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has an IBD help center. And I don't know how many of you are aware of that. You probably,
I don't know that.
right? But
That's pretty cool.
but they have a help center, and I'm gonna put a link in there too. We're gonna have a lot of links today for you guys, but these are
About
really
3 so
good ones
far?
you should keep. Yeah, these are great. So they have a link, and they are more than happy to help you with anything with the 504 plan. There's other things you can talk to them about, but they specifically tell you if you need help with the 504 plan, to either there's multiple ways to contact them, which they'll be in the link. They also have a phone number, which is 1-888-694-8872, and you would choose option 8. So if you just want to call and talk to somebody, you can, and they'll be able to help you with this and maybe walk you through it and make you feel more confident about
The
the
Crohn's and Colitis Foundation is very trustworthy.
there's things like this. This is a perfect example of a service they provide, and
I'm thankful for it.
right. And so they're very transparent about their funding. They're transparent about everything goes. But if you actually look at their website and look through everything, it is extremely helpful. And, even they have the whole new recipes for diet, whatever diet you're on, there's a lot of things they do. So really good site.
Yes.
And I highly recommend it.
Foundation.
Yeah,
site.
it's really good. Yeah, great foundation,
Yes.
good website. So, and
Perfect.
so we're going to kind of end this slowly with going to go into what to do if the school doesn't follow or approve the
Oh, wait,
504
we're getting
plan.
to the part where the 504, where
Yeah.
the schools are kind of like insurance.
Because, well, this does happen because sometimes a teacher knows about it, but they don't follow it. And so you need to know your rights and make sure that it is followed. And so the first thing, so if it's not approved, because you have that, you turn it in, they have the 30 days to review it. So if the school tries to remove anything from the plan because they don't think it's necessary,
Contact the doctor.
right. Yeah, exactly. Mason's like, I'm calling Dr. B and we're going to get a letter or a phone call to the
Dr.
school.
B will fight.
Yeah. Our doctor is excellent with that. She's very aggressive in all the perfect medical ways for us. So you're going to want to emphasize that IBD symptoms can change, and sometimes they're going to be active, sometimes
be dormant.
they're not. So if a school's like, well, right now
He seems
he
fine.
seems fine, I think we can remove this, make sure that you keep those accommodations in place and let them know that it can change, and we want that
One day
in
he can
there.
be perfectly fine. The next day he can be in a flare.
Yeah. So very important to advocate. And it's also important to keep open communication if any additional health situations arise. Kind of we talked about earlier. So if anything does change and you need to add to it, make sure the school's contacted, and so you can make all the appropriate changes and make sure your child is okay.
When I was diagnosed, I was fine. Then we got home and there's my back going out.
Yeah, which that was unexpected. We were not prepared
if I
for
did go
that.
to the school, that would be really important to add to the
Right.
plan.
You would have had a lot of missed days.
Yeah.
So what if they don't approve the 504 plan? You've gone through this, you've explained what you need in there, and they don't approve it. So you can file a complaint.
At this point, you should probably just go to a different school.
And Mason's like, I'm done. I'll go where I'm wanted. But no, it's important to do this too, because you want to advocate and educate. Yeah, it's always a good idea.
Educate the educators.
And sometimes you can't just easily switch schools. And so this is like you're in a certain district and this is where you go. So you can file a complaint or request a due process hearing with a 504 coordinator if you do not agree with the school's evaluation. And you also should review, there is the Notice of Parents and Students' Rights under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 for more information. So these are maybe things I would think right here you could bring up if you needed to call that IBD help center if you are stuck, and they might be able to guide you in the right direction. But that's basically, you are allowed to file a complaint or request a hearing about that. So what if you disagree with the 504 plan or any of its components, when they get back to you and you disagree? So this is what we were just kind of talking about. You express your views and maybe suggest alternatives to what they've proposed and something that works for you.
Upgrade it maybe in a way that's custom to you and your wants.
Right. And so maybe say, okay, we can see what you're saying here, because maybe a school is trying to say what you're asking for is just impossible to do, but maybe they're offering a different solution. So, hear each other out, but make sure that your needs are met and addressed. They do say you can refuse to sign the plan until your concerns are addressed. And so don't feel forced into it. Don't let the school make you feel like you have to agree to this. You fight for your child, fight for
You have your own rights.
Yeah, you do. So it's important to know that. What do you think? Do you have to prove they're struggling with classes or failing to get one of these after you've heard all this?
I don't think so.
Right.
Like, if a child needs something, they do need that.
Right.
Like, kind of like with insurance, the way I think I know with this is a good reason is when they say, well, we're gonna put him on an off-brand version of this drug that is cheaper.
Yeah.
When the one is already working, and they say, well, you need to prove that you need this one.
Yeah.
But if it's working for the child, it'd be best to just keep them on it.
Right.
Like, they don't need to prove themselves to be able to get the thing that works best for them.
Right. So you don't have to show like IBD is causing me to fail and I need this. You shouldn't get to that point, right?
No, you shouldn't.
It shouldn't take that. So and so that's true. So the law doesn't say that your child has to be struggling or failing for these accommodations. And even if you're a straight A student, you still qualify for a 504 plan. It has nothing to do with the grades. So, yeah, so you don't have to, a child doesn't have to prove anything as far as they're struggling or they need this. That's not how this works. So, you're your child's best advocate. So, make sure you have an active role in all of this. I know it's exhausting. I know a lot of you are trying to work, trying to take care of the other kids, and you're already taking care of all the medical needs. And so sometimes it feels daunting, but it's
You are the
important.
parent and you know the most.
Right.
The child.
It is just important. And unfortunately, it'd be great if they provided advocates for these tired parents, but they don't. And so it's just very important to keep that fight up and keep that spirit up because school isn't going to last forever, but this education will. And so it's very important that you step up and you make sure your child gets what they deserve. And, you know, the other important thing is, which Mason has kind of learned, it's important to involve the child in these processes because they're going to need to advocate. Well, you need to know what's happening, and you may need to advocate for yourself one day as well. So it's important for you to see a parent advocating so these kids can look up to you and see what you're doing so they can learn to do the same for themselves. And it's important to, like we said, involve them so they know exactly what's going on because
confused about what they're advocating for.
Right. And I think it's probably important. I didn't put this in the script, but I think it's also important because it's important for you to know if a teacher isn't doing what's on the 504 plan. If
My teacher does everything. Our teacher is very...
We're a little different over here. But it would be important if you were in class and you knew your rights as the child. So if the teacher is not following something, you would know to say, this is not happening for me at school. And you would know to stand up for yourself. So that's also another reason it's important. And so, and we're going to kind of go over that on the next episode as well. It's like the do's and don'ts and things like this. So we're going to kind of cover more
comments.
Yeah.
If you have anything you want in the next episode.
Yeah. If you want, now is your time to say it so we can get it into the next episode. If you have a question about 504 plans, or if you have something to add that you think we could share and it's a story or something worth mentioning, please share it so we can talk about it in the next episode.
Maybe if they wanted, when they have a comment or a suggestion for what they want, we can say, well, this segment, which has been suggested, we'll give a shout out to the person who gives a suggestion. If you wanted, you can say, I want a shout out or something.
Yeah. So feel free to do that. And the other thing is we're going to kind of close out with is that make sure you're enlisting the help with your child's healthcare provider, with their medical team, because chances are they have helped, especially if most of us have pediatric GIs and pediatricians, but they have likely helped develop these 504 plans. And so they're probably very knowledgeable about them. And so they can help give you guidance as well. So very important to reach out to your medical team too with these questions. So lots of resources for you, lots of people to talk to. And I think another episode we may do, or I may put in next one is, 504 plans for college. So we're here talking about K through 12. It's important for even if you're homeschooling. That is why it's going to be important for you to listen to do another segment that we'll talk about 504 plans for college. So that's important. So like we said, tune in next week because we're going to be covering suggested accommodations to be requested, like, extra time for tests, excused absences, things like that. So we're going to be going over a bunch of different ideas and sharing them to help you guys So maybe there's something that you wouldn't have thought to include. So we're going to include those. And then we're going to also talk about, like I said, the do's and don'ts when you're creating a 504 plan. So we'll kind of help you with, so if there's something we didn't answer in here and you're like, well, what if we may answer that
in the next
episode. So we'll be doing that. So that's it. Do you feel like you learned something?
I think I learned a lot of things today and asked a lot of things today.
Yeah, well, it's good because that means that I think it's good when you have questions because that means you're really listening and
You're
trying to
interested in
understand it.
learning.
Yeah, you were interested in it. So that's a good thing. So hopefully we've helped all of you out there, and you'll stay tuned for next week for the next part of the 504 plans.
Part 2.
And yeah, check out all the links. We're going to include all the links here for you guys. And so you guys can follow us on Instagram at Team IB Determined. We have all of our journeys on there through medical, through just life, everything on there. So it's a great site. And the Reggie Project. If you guys want to share your journeys and
with Reggie,
with a Reggie, that would be really cool. So check out the Reggie Project on Instagram as well. And then you're welcome to listen to us wherever you listen to any of your podcasts on places like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and even YouTube now has a podcast section.
This is the perfect segue to YouTube itself.
Yes.
If you like watching and listening, go to YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a video, make sure to hit that bell button. Yep. And also, we have been getting more comments. And we have gotten one of the most viewed videos.
Yeah,
which was actually a short.
Yeah, that really took off. That was the one of Mason getting just his medical treatments.
Yeah. Around yesterday, it was at like 700 views.
Yeah, we're not super familiar with this, so sometimes it like sits, and then all of a sudden we come back like, whoa, it's had 150 views in the last hour. Like what happened?
That's like this.
Yeah, so it like all of a sudden does these crazy jumps, and then it kind of hangs out again. But that was kind of exciting. So so if you haven't watched it, check out the short. It's literally just Mason at treatments
with very, very good music by Imagine Dragons.
Yeah. That's it.
Track list.
Yeah, I think we made it through. So now it's Mason gets to do a little bit more schoolwork, and yay! I know, but it was a busy week. We had and it was an infusion, and then he has another appointment on Tuesday, so we didn't really get a week off in between. So we're going to another one for his injection. So but that's what we do. That's how we do it. So that's how he is so far ahead and able to keep up just fine. So good job, Mason. Good job. It's a lot of work. So anyways, thank you guys for listening and for watching.
Yes.
And we'll see you next week on the next
episode. Episode part 2.
So see you there.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to play something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.